Oh, my roasted coffee. We stayed up last night. We were party animals. Stayed up till 11:30, don't you know? It's crazy. Hey, Steve.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, should I restart the audio hijack debug log since nothing has gone wrong in all this time?
Sure.
It's taking a risk though.
Yeah, I guess.
Let me see how big the debug log file is. We're logging all kinds of data. Oh, it's 4 kilobytes. I'll leave it running. Are we live?
We're live.
How exciting. Everybody's excited. So, last week we had interesting problems in the show. And to recap, for anybody who wasn't here last time, actually, should I do roll call first?
Yeah,
That
I
way
think
can
so.
Catch anybody who's late. All right,
Sure.
we've got John and Rose and Mike and Sandy and Steve and Michael and who else is in here? Who's here?
You got
Lindsay's
Frank.
daughter snoozing. We got Frank and we got let's see, Mike Price is in there twice and Rose.
Rose,
you haven't been
okay.
here in a while. Where you been?
No, she was here last week.
Was she?
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't realize.
I'm pretty sure.
So, I'm drinking coffee for once. So anyway, the problem we had was really interesting. We've had it 2 weeks in a row now, and the basic problem is that my audio disappears, which is kind of impactful, to the show, since I'm the on-air talent and all. The interesting thing about this is it's not just that Steve can't hear me and the live show can't hear me. It's I can't hear me either. So my voice stopped making. I mean, I was unable to make noise in any of the applications I use. Basically there was no sound coming from my mic. So we fiddled with a lot of different things, and then I thought, well, maybe it's my interface. So I unplugged the interface, and we used my older USB interface. So this is the interface that takes my XLR mic. And okay, did you hear that one, Steve?
No, I did
Getting
not.
Notifications.
Oh, wait a minute. I don't have Mimo on.
You're not listening to me. Oh, okay. Yeah. neither
I
am
just have Discord
oh,
on,
you know
so
what
maybe.
It is? I know what it is.
What is it?
It's. Well, I'm going to steal the thunder a little bit here. It's the M1 Mac Mini in the room is making noise.
Aha.
And I can't look at the monitor, but I happen to have one of my MacBook Pros, my other MacBook Pro, logged into screen sharing. And wow, that's fast. And so I just need to mute the sound. I need to mute the sound over there. So give me 1 second here. Sound, where's sound? Alphabetical. Let me mute it. Alert volume. Let's go down to 0 on that. Well, maybe I'll let you have a little bit of sound. All right, that's good. And output, we don't want that making any noise. Mac Mini speakers built in. Okay, let's turn you way down too. Okay, so that's why I'm hearing. I'm looking at all my devices. I got Do Not Disturb on everywhere, not on the Mac Mini. Okay, so where was I? So we thought maybe it was the interface. So Steve ran in and got my USB interface and swapped it out for the Thunderbolt interface that I started using a little while ago, and it fixed everything. So I thought that's what it was, and I was really sad. But I had on my to-do list to get a hold of the people at Sweetwater to get an exchange of it because it was clearly not functioning. And then I was listening to Dave Hamilton at the end of the Mac Geek Gab. He's chattering along to John, and all of a sudden, John's audio disappears. So Dave is in the same position as Steve as being the producer of the show. So he's running Mimo Live and doing all of the switching and audio and video and photos, video going on, and he's producing the audio and video that goes to YouTube. So Dave is Steve and John is Allison in this context. Now, we're not running the exact same situation to do Mimo Live, but it's close enough. And so I thought, wait a minute, if Dave had the same problem, and Dave mentioned this is the third time in a row this has happened. So Dave runs all the same software I do. He runs some things I don't run, and I run some things he doesn't run. But we're both running Loopback and Audio Hijack, and we're running Mimo Live, and we're doing live shows to YouTube. So we started thinking maybe we could figure something. I thought maybe we could figure it out together. So I texted him, and we got on a video call, and we started chatting about it. And then we thought it really seemed like the big difference for me is that I have had no problems with doing podcasting without Mimo Live. Everything else is running the same kind of, well, Hindenburg isn't always there, but Hindenburg's not in common with Dave, so that's probably not it. So we thought, well, maybe it's Mimo Live that's causing the problem. And so we got a hold of Oliver Breidenbach, the CEO of Boinks, that makes it, and we got him on the video call with us. And it was great fun because he's a great guy, and we've had a lot of fun with him over the years. And he's really sad that he can't travel like he used to and get to see us and stuff. So we hung out, Steve and Dave and me and Oliver, and we talked through it. and he couldn't figure out any reason that Mimo Live would have caused it. And the other interesting thing is Mimo Live hasn't changed in months. It's been a couple of months since it's changed, so it didn't seem like that was likely. But the underlying components of all the audio hijack and or audio hijack and loopback and stuff from Rogue Amoeba, that has been changing a lot because they're doing updates to Big Sur and for the M1 Mac and everything, so they've got a lot of changes in the software. We were unable to get a hold of Paul Kafasis on that short notice and get him in on the call, the CEO of Rogue Amoeba, but we worked on an email together to him, and he says he doesn't see how his stuff could be causing this either, which you would expect. So, anyway, we were... the good news is they both gave us some ideas of ways to try to capture what goes wrong. So right now I'm running the debug log for audio hijack, and if something goes wrong, I have a way to capture the process from Activity Monitor for Mimo Live. So we have ways to capture it if it does happen. Now the funny thing is, Steve and I turned on all of this stuff at what, like 3 o'clock, Steve? No, 3:30?
3:30.
3:30. So it's been running for an hour and a half, and nothing went wrong. We even had I had audio sources playing and stuff, so we're not really sure why that what's going on. But Dave did do one thing. Dave changed the buffer size he did it in Logic, but there's a way in Mimo Live for me to just tickle the buffer size. So this actually is slightly different, Steve. I think when I was talking to Oliver, I changed it to 128 bits, and it was at 512. So it's possible that fixed it, but I don't think.
What did you change it in?
In Mimo
Core
Live,
audio?
in Mimo Live, there's an audio buffer size. So it was at 512. I've got it running at 128. But they both thought that it was the fact that Dave changed it, not what he changed it to, that might have made the difference.
Okay.
The other thing I can do is I can if that doesn't fix it, if it happens, I can change the bit rate of my mic, which will make it sound funny for a second. But what we're trying to do is flush the audio system from the Mac, just flush it, get it to fire back up because something's getting its panties in a bunch. So anyway, yes, tickle your buffer, Frank says. That is the short and long story, and I've probably vamped long enough that I can play our special message. What do you think?
I think you should.
Anybody who's later than this doesn't get to hear.
Misses out. Yep.
Okay. And here we go. This will not be in the podcast. We are authorized only to play this for his family.
Hello, my fellow chat room friends. I just thought I would send this in so Allison and Steve, my wingman, ultimate wingman, could share it with everybody. I will be back with you as soon as I can. I am still recovering from being sick and in the hospital. Still in the hospital. But they can play you. This is exclusive content for the chat room only. But I want you to know I appreciate everything I'm hearing, and thank you guys for being concerned about me. Take care and look forward to my return, and my sarcasm will be even stronger than ever. Take care. Bye.
And I bet it will be.
You know,
that was good to hear from him.
We could tell that he was doing better when he started getting snarky and he was giving me a hard time.
Yeah.
Because for a while there he wasn't, and you know he's not normal if he's not doing well if he's not being a pain in my backside. So
it's looking good for a return back to home this coming week.
Yeah, I don't know how soon he'll be in the live chat room.
I think he said Friday would be, well, yeah, that may not mean in the chat room, but at least at home with family before Christmas.
He's been giving us little updates, and he's doing better and better and better. You can tell he's excited that he's making so much progress. So he's doing a bunch of physical therapy, and he'll be back on his feet in no time. So, yeah, that was kind of nice, I thought.
Yeah.
Alrighty. We should probably check what my Hindenburg preferences are. I should be doing that with that. And nope. Don't confuse yourself. I should be with that one. There we go. I can also mess with the sample rate in Hindenburg. Yeah, the only thing we didn't do that happened last time when we had the failures was record anything in Hindenburg. But Dave doesn't use Hindenburg, so I don't think that's probably it. NCF. There we go. All right. I think I'm going to start recording. Actually, let me do a test recording. Just make sure. One more time. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan, and I'm excited to be here. What do you think? Sounds really loud. Bring that down. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan, and I'm excited to be here.
That's quieter than your live.
Okay. Well, that's interesting because it's mic full up. Is that 100%?
But your playback, did you bring down the playback?
I did not.
Okay.
Okay,
I thought I saw some scaling going on of the vertical axis.
Yeah, it does that on its own. But I think it might. Let me do another one. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com. Looks like I'm peeking in there, in fact. Yeah, you see it comes down by itself. That's an auto
Oh, okay.
leveler.
I thought you were doing that.
No,
Got it.
that's an auto leveler. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast. Yeah, that's good.
I mean, it's fine. You can go with it as is. I was just wondering why it was lower in volume. Let's go with it.
Muting Steve. I love that button. There we go. Hey, I could still hear you. Oh, I'm listening. Okay. Switching to Mimo Live. God, I love those buttons. Okay, here we go. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, December 13th, 2020, and this is show number 714. Well, I had a complete blast on Chit Chat Across the Pond Light this week. Tom Merritt is the co-host, or guest on 13 currently running podcasts. He's a science fiction author, and he makes time to exercise.
Hold up. I think Sandy caught that you said show 714.
It's
814.
714.
Good job, Sandy. Caught it early so we can.
In the title, why does it say 714 there?
I don't know.
Take two. Thank you, dear. Hungover from class. Yes. I tried to go for a walk. I thought, I'll just go for a walk this afternoon. And I made it to the end of the block. I walked like 5 miles. I made it to the end of the block. All right. Here we go. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, December 13th, 2020, and this is show number 814. Well, I had a complete blast on Chit Chat Across the Pond Light this week. Tom Merritt is the host, co-host, or guest on 13 currently running podcasts. He's a science fiction author, and he makes time to exercise himself and his dogs, and he even spends time with his wife. I wanted to know how he accomplishes all of this, without going crazy, so I asked him to come on the show and explain it to us. My suspicion was that he had 1 or maybe 2 clones, or possibly that he only sleeps 3 hours per night. I was wrong. I don't want to spoil the story, but Tom has a lot of strategies that are just common sense. And I'm not saying this is going to be like a self-help. I don't want to. I don't want to spoil the story, but Tom has a lot of strategies that are just common sense, but I never thought of applying them the way he does. I'm not saying that this is going to be, a self-help episode from which you can learn, but, it was really fun to see how he gets so darn much done. You can listen to this episode over at podfeet.com, or better yet, subscribe in your podcatcher to Chit Chat Across the Pond Light and get all of the episodes. All right.
Would this be an appropriate chapter mark time?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all.
Wait a minute. You know what? I just noticed we have no wingmen here tonight. Sandy might have to help us out a little bit. Well, she's already helped us out.
Oh, she is.
But
she says just
Rick isn't here. Rick isn't here, and Kevin. So, if you wanna, mash some buttons. Thank you.
All right, I just mashed the buttons. Bing, bing, bing. There it goes. Oh, I muted my sound effects because I thought it was coming from my computer, but it was not. So that's good. So let me go here. We'll do another one. Watch them just magically show up. Okay, we're going to go H. And now I heard it. It's not the same without hearing the bell ring. There we go. I couldn't hear my little sound effects. All right. We have a tiny tip. Oh, I got to play tiny tip music, don't I?
Yes.
Pulled this one over from last week. All right, where's my tiny tip music here? Tiny tip. This is not going to be a very long show, by the way. Let's see. All right. Here we go. Well, you know, that music means it's time for a tiny tip. Recently, Bart and I were chatting about the aspect ratio options on the iPhone's camera. I hadn't actually noticed that you could change the aspect ratio until he mentioned it. I'm talking about as you take the picture, not afterwards in cropping. Starting with the iPhone XS, at the top of the camera screen, there's now a little downward-facing chevron. Tapping it reveals a whole host of options, some of which are duplicating functions you can already see on screen without the chevron. You'll get an option to change the flash, enable night mode, enable live photos, set a timer, and even change the exposure with a slider all before you take the photo. But the control I wanted to talk about today is the aspect ratio because I discovered something very curious about it. The button that changes the aspect ratio will be the current aspect ratio. It's kind of strange. It's a menu button, but it says the current aspect ratio. So if you've never fiddled with it before, it's probably showing as 4:3, a 4:3. Tapping the aspect ratio will allow you to change it to square or 16:9. Bart takes a lot of landscape photos, so he keeps his in 16:9. And, you know, I'm always trying to be as cool as Bart, so I set mine at 16:9 as well. I'm really enjoying shooting in this aspect ratio because I feel like I'm getting so much more on screen, sort of like having a wide-angle view but without distortion at the edges. But one day I was messing with the photo, trying to get the white balance and exposure the way I wanted it, and I managed to get it all borked up, and I just wanted to start over. So I hit the revert or original button, depending on the OS you're using, expecting to just see the exposure go back to the way it was. But that's not all that went back. That's not all that happened. This photo I'd taken in 16:9 in landscape was suddenly 4:3. Not only that, there was a ton more information in the photo. Everything that was there before in the width was still there, but there was way more photo available to me in height. That's when I realized that shooting in 16:9 on an iPhone is simply cropping your photos in advance for you. It's not widening them, it's actually cropping them. Understanding this is important. Once you realize how this works, you can make an informed decision on how you want to shoot. Bart really likes to have his images in 16:9, so it's better for him to start in that aspect ratio. He likes to see in the camera how he's framing the image. When he gets home and he starts to edit, he can still keep the photo at 16:9 in photos, but he has the option to slide the crop up and down to show more sky or more ground. But if you mostly like 4:3 images, then shoot in 4:3 from the beginning, and if once in a while you want to do a landscape shot or some other capture that would look better in a wider format, just use photos after the fact to crop to 16:9. Maybe you knew all this, but it sure was a surprise to me, so I figured it was worthy of a tiny tip. All right, and there was a big typo at the beginning in this.
Yes. In the blog post, you talk about this being 16:9 landscape when you noticed suddenly 4:3, but your example's portrait. Well, you weren't referring to that shot then. You were referring to a different shot.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to say that in order to be able to try to explain that there was stuff above and below, vertically.
Yeah.
I had to say it was
I guess in this case it's to the left and to the right, but it works. I would just leave it.
Yeah, now I've got to find the typo. You get an option to change the flash. Enable nightmare. That is what it actually said.
We need that mode.
Nightmare.
I think that mode has been enabled all year. 2020.
Nice, Steve. Very nice. All right, mash the buttons.
Hey,
mash the buttons, please.
One other thing.
I wanted to text expander snippet first.
Oh, okay. Go
She
ahead.
says, mash the buttons, please.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's nice.
It's very well done.
All right.
Now it's in
What
caps.
did you
Great.
wanna-
Your show number, do you want me to fix that? It's still showing 714 in the blog
Do
post?
not fix that, because I've got some other typos to fix in this post.
All
I
right.
fixed it in the post, and I'll upload it.
All right.
But now I gotta. I want to know I accomplished. Asked him to come to the show. My suspicion was he had one or two, possibly only 6 hours per night. Don't want to spoil the story. I'm not saying this will be a self-help, but it was fun to see how he gets. It was fun to see how me gets so much done. How he gets so much done. There we go. Alrighty. So, I want to hear the transition here. Cross the pond light and get all of the episodes. Was that too quick?
One more time.
That's French for I wasn't listening. Here we go. And get all of the episodes.
A little quick. If it's hard to change, I wouldn't bother. Maybe half second.
That music. Yeah, I don't think it's hard.
I think it's fine from the end of the jingle. It's the beginning of the jingle relative to the previous.
Yeah, so if I grab both of those and I just give them just a
Half second.
get all of the episodes.
There you
That's
go.
a little better. All right. Here, go to the end. And mash the buttons, she said.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mash those buttons.
All of these articles are short. Copy link. Copy. And watch the magic. Nothing up my sleeve. Oh, you're not even looking at it.
Nice. Well done. Good mashing.
All right. And I should save, too. All right. So what am I doing? I found an out. Yeah, to Rose's teacher's pet. Yeah, she found a typo in the Mac Mini.
So she already told you about it?
Yeah, Rose did.
Nice.
By the way, Rose, texting me and Facebook is probably the second slowest way to get my attention. Instagram is the only one that's less likely to get my attention.
What's your
So
preference?
Just
a
preference is
text message? Telegram.
Telegram.
But if they're not on Telegram...
Well, they should get on Telegram if they want to talk to me.
Okay.
Seriously.
Got it.
iMessage is a dumpster fire. Jeez.
Yeah, it's
I
not
just
good.
put it on the Mac Mini, and it didn't bring in any messages from anybody ever. I can do a search for Lindsay, and it says, nope, there's nobody named Lindsay Tondi. Nobody, nope, never heard of that name.
Because she's not the daughter. No, she is the daughter.
Yep. All right. Back to work. Muting Steve. Our phones are now our cameras, and their ability to capture photos and videos is only getting better and better. But you may miss one ergonomic feature of your now dusty big girl camera, and that's the hand grip. Holding onto a rectangular slab of glass to take photos can get tiring after a while, especially if you're shooting a lot of video. It takes more effort to balance it, making it more tiring and increasing the likelihood that you could drop your phone. It's also a bit tricky sometimes to hold a balance of phone and then get one finger to the screen to tap the shutter icon. At the same time, I don't personally miss having to lug around a giant DSLR camera or even a diminutive Micro Four Thirds camera just to get that more stable grip. What if you could have the best of both worlds? A removable hand grip for your cell phone. Turns out this is a crowded category, and my friend Pat Dengler bought the Ulanzi Select Cap Grip from B&H Photo for the grand sum of $12.95. She lets me play with her toys, sometimes even before she has a chance to play with them. The cap grip connects to your phone by the same kind of spring mechanism you're used to seeing on like a phone mount for your car, the two sides that squeeze together. The grip holds phones from 2.44 inches to 3.27 inches wide. The iPhone 12 Pro in a very thin case is a smidge less than 3 inches wide, and I have to say it was very snug to get into the grip. There was no way it was falling out, but I think it was close to the limit in size unless you're way stronger than me at getting those springs to pull apart. The most important thing is that the cap grip does exactly what it's designed to do. It gives you a very comfortable hand grip while holding the phone. Now, if this is all it did, it wouldn't really solve all of the problems I described. Built into the cap grip is a physical Bluetooth shutter button right where your forefinger comfortably rests when the grip is on the phone. Connecting the shutter button via Bluetooth to the iPhone was about the easiest Bluetooth connection I've ever done. Hold the shutter button down until the light comes on, and that will trigger the cap grip to show up in the Bluetooth settings on your phone. Tap connect, and you're done. When you're finished, press and hold the shutter button to disconnect from Bluetooth. The shutter button actually slides out of the cap grip, so that means you can now remotely shoot photos from your cell phone using this shutter button. This can be especially handy if you use the 1/4-20 thread on the bottom of the cap grip to mount your phone on a tripod. Sliding the shutter button out of the cap grip was a little tough. You might need a strong fingernail to get it out at first, but hopefully it would loosen up after a while. The Ulanzi's cap grip isn't a product that's going to change the world, and I don't think it actually solves a problem for me. But if you find yourself holding a phone for long periods, shooting video or photos, or maybe if you've got a condition where your hands tire easily, or if you have trouble holding a phone steady for photography, the Ulanzi cap grip is only $13. It's very light, and it might be just what you need. Now, when I went to look for it, the Ulanzi cap grip was out of stock at B&H, but I think it has come back in stock, somebody told me. But you could also go right to the source at ulanzi.com. That's ULANZI.com. And of course, the links are in the show notes. If you do go to ulanzi.com, you'll find that they have lots of very inexpensive mounts and tripods and even cages for phones. You know, those things where you can put a phone or an iPad into a cage and mount, a light to it and a microphone and all those kinds of things. They have those and they're really inexpensive. And they actually they actually have them for other types of cameras as well. You might find something else that you need while you're there, and it won't empty your pocketbook. I'm unsteady in general. Nice, Frank. Another short one. No typos in that one.
Tim McCoy commented on your blog post. He said he went to Amazon and they were $17.95. So B&H, at least on December 11th, did have them at the price you quoted.
Okay, good.
But free shipping. But free shipping only if you have orders greater than 49. So he bought 4 of them. For stocking stuffers.
Oh, maybe I should. Do
you want to? Yeah. Do you want to see his?
If I do it really quickly. Nope, I can do it.
Got it.
This just in. Steve has been reading a comment on the blog on my. Nope. Maybe not. This just in, Steve found the comment on the blog post for the Ulanzi hand grip where Tim McCoy went looking for the device, and he found that on Amazon it was $17. I mean, that's crazy. So he went over to B&H. He was able to find them in stock, but it was free shipping only for orders of $40 or more. So he bought 4 of them, and he's giving them away as stocking stuffers. How's that for a perfect solution? Well,
the numbers were close. Sorry, didn't know you were going right into it.
Yeah, I figured I could because it wasn't bad. That's okay. Let's see. Let me hear that gap though. And it won't empty your pocketbook. This just in. I thought that looked a little long. What was it you were going to say? The prices are pretty close.
Yeah, your prices that you said were a little off, but close enough, I think.
Oh, it's not $14. It's not $13.
It's $17.95.
That's at Amazon. I didn't quote Amazon.
Then you quoted I thought you did quote Amazon. Anyway, then you went on to say it free shipping. It's not. It's $17.95 at Amazon. Anyway, then the free shipping wasn't $40. It was $49 for B&H. I don't think it's worth going back and. No.
But you just want to correct me. Okay, good.
I just want the chat room to know and people listening to the live show.
Okay. Well, you're there, and it won't empty your pocketbook. This just in, Steve. All right. Now can I record? Support the show?
Anytime you want.
Thank you, dear. Muting. On last week's show, I suggested that for now, I didn't really feel right asking for donations to support the shows. I asked that you consider donating to a local food bank to help those in need. I decided I should probably take my own advice, so I did just that. By the way, I do reserve the right to get back to being greedy really soon, though, okay? There we go. All right, now mash the buttons. Sigh. I'm ready. I'm paying attention, Sandy. Why is
Mash
there a
'em.
sigh at the end? PDX Kurt is here.
Yeah. Welcome back, PDX Kurt.
There we go. They'll raise the price closer to Christmas. Who, me? Or the food banks?
Well, Amazon would, probably.
Okay. Oh, this is a fun one. I love this one. It's the first time I've ever worked Grumpy Cat into blog post. All right, this one's got some meat on its bones. All right, muting Steve. Oh, no, he muted himself. Quick sip of coffee. I'm addicted now. Kurt can't stay away. Resistance is futile. All right, save. Here we go. This week, Dr. Alexander Salter, the son of our dear friends Diana Bill, had an article published in the Wall Street Journal. How cool is that? As you can imagine, we're all pretty chuffed about it around here. We were doing virtual high fives about it, and I was trying to think of something to do to commemorate the occasion. I got the idea to try to create one of those drawings that they use in the Wall Street Journal for the bigwigs, like Steve Jobs, Walter Mossberg, and Grumpy Cat. These portraits are called head cuts. It's spelled Hedcuts. It's a method which is a combination of tiny dots and little lines between them. For the real portraits that they do at the Wall Street Journal, artists painstakingly draw these tiny dots and lines. But the Wall Street Journal has developed an AI algorithm that will create a pretty good simulation. If you're a subscriber to the Wall Street Journal, you can upload your own image and have one made. But alas, I'm not a subscriber to the Wall Street Journal, and neither is Alex. I figured there had to be a way to create a close approximation, so I went hunting on the internets. Remember I said up front that head cuts are dots and lines? Well, we're going to settle for just the dots. A drawing made with just the dots is called a stipple drawing. In case you're interested, to stipple means to engrave by means of dots and flicks. I found lots of tutorials on how to draw your own stipple drawings, but we know that's not going to happen with Allison. I needed the nerd solution, and boy, howdy did I find it. I discovered an open source project called Stipple Gen 2 by a team that goes by Evil Mad Scientist. They have a blog post about Stipple Gen 2 at evilmadscientist.com. Stipple Gen 2 was created in something they call the Processing Development Environment, which I'd never heard of before. According to processing.org, processing is a flexible software sketchbook and a language for learning how to code within the context of the visual arts. Well, this sure sounded fun, so I went to the Evil Mad Genius GitHub repository, and I started to poke around. I do want to point out the GitHub repos are not the friendliest environment if you're not a developer, but luckily I am a developer, so I can teach you a little trick. If you just want to download and run the compiled software, it's not entirely obvious how to do it. Repos in GitHub do have a big green button inviting you to download the code, but you'll get exactly that, the code behind the tool, not an app that you can run. Not all repos have packaged apps, but some do. If there is an app or something nicely packaged to be downloaded, it will be on the right side under the word Releases. Now, I didn't know about this, but I learned about it from Helma when we were working on the Taming the Terminal book. If you want to just download the latest version of this fine manual that we all wrote, just look for the Releases section in our repo, and of course there's a link in the show notes. Under Releases on the Stipple Gen 2 repo, I don't like the way that worded. It got clumsy there at the end. If you want to just I'll give you an opportunity to clean my glasses. There used to be such a macro for Pixel Maker. Oh, there's stipple quilting. That's neat. Okay. What's that? Naming the terminal book. Okay, that's where I was. All right. If you want to just download the latest version of Taming the Terminal, you can look for the Releases section in our repo over on GitHub. And of course, there's a link in the show notes. Anyway, back to Stipple Gen 2. Under Releases on the StippleGen 2 repo, you'll find zip files for Windows, both 32 and 64-bit, Linux, Mac, and even a signed version for Mac OS. All right, we're past the first nerdy hump. Double-click that zip file and you've got yourself an app to play with. Now, we circle right back into Nerdville as soon as you launch it, because StippleGen 2 has that lovely Soviet-era UI that lets you know you're working on an open-source tool. The majority of the app is a giant square with a drawing being created before your very eyes. The app starts by creating a stipple drawing upon launch using an input file of Grace Kelly. Dots, or should I say stipples, are being calculated and added in successive passes, which they call generations. You can press a not very identifiable button to load your own image as a PNG, JPEG, or GIF. Nothing against Grace, but I decided to use a headshot of me to do the illustrations for this exercise. Across the bottom of the image is a narrow panel that contains all of the controls. The font is simply dreadful with no anti-aliasing, and the text is wee tiny such that it's nearly unreadable. I even read one of the updates said we made it even thinner. You made it even harder to read. Anyway, luckily the control sliders are also super janky and hard to use, so that makes up for the font issues. The left side of the control panel has the primary controls. It warns you that changing the primary controls will restart the process of creating your stipple drawing. Depending on your settings, creation of a good stipple drawing will take a very long time, so you do want to think about it before you change one of the primary controls. Under the primary control warning, you'll see a slider to adjust the number of stipples. Now, there's a lot of math going on figuring out where these stipples go, so the more stipples you ask for, the time to calculate it goes up dramatically. By default, StippleGen 2 starts with 2,000 stipples, but you can go up to a maximum of 10,000 stipples. I noticed on the blog post there is a secret way to go higher, but you're not going to want to. It turns out 2,000 doesn't look great, but 10,000 can take a really, really long time. On the bottom right side of the control panel, you'll see time per frame. So that's the same as time per generation. They kind of mix and match those words, but a generation is what you see get displayed on screen each time it does a whole new set of calculations. So if you start with 2,000 stipples, it takes around 7.5 seconds to generate one frame. If you drag the slider to tell it to calculate 10,000 stipples, that time per frame jumps to nearly 800 seconds, which is 13 minutes per generation. Now, while it's working away at this task of drawing the stipples for you, you'll see the status on the right side say calculating Voronoi diagram. Well, clearly, before we keep going learning the controls for StippleGen 2, we need to go down a rabbit hole and find out what a Voronoi diagram is. By the way, it's spelled V-O-R-O-N-O-I, which is very hard to say. Anyway, going down these rabbit holes is why it takes me so long to write my blog posts. Anyway, learning about these, according to Wikipedia, in mathematics, a Voronoi diagram is a partition of a plane into regions close to each of a set of given objects. In the simplest case, these objects are just finitely many points in the plane, called seeds, sites, or generators. For each seed, there is a corresponding region consisting of all of the points of the plane closer to that seed than to any other. These regions are called Voronoi cells. Okay, that made it really clear, but I think I can clarify it for you. Basically, you have a bunch of dots on a piece of paper. If you put a bunch of dots on a piece of paper, you can draw polygonal shapes around each one that connects directly to each other. So every polygon is stuck to another polygon. That's possible to create that. When StippleGen 2 begins calculating, you don't see the dots. You see the Voronoi diagram being created first. Now, I know David Ross is going to be disappointed that I'm not going to get into the math of how these are calculated, but you know what? We simply can't go down that route, David. We have time, and we don't have time. We must be content with understanding that there's a lot of math going on and move on to making our stipple drawing look as good as possible. To my delight, macOS Big Sur kept spontaneously Okay, enough audio typos. All right. Save. I decided to run StippleGen 2 on my spare older MacBook Pro, which is running Big Sur. To my delight, macOS Big Sur kept spontaneously rebooting on that Mac after Stipple Gen 2 had been running for hours. I would restart the generation, and Big Sur would do a reboot again after hours of generations. Now, it's been suggested that perhaps the Mac was overheating, which is still no excuse, but I don't think that's it. Even with 10,000 stipples to calculate, Stipple Gen 2 only uses one processor fully, but doesn't stress the other three in that 2016 MacBook Pro, so the total load is only about 24%. It doesn't appear to be using the GPU at all, and the CPU temperature sensor only went from 60 degrees Fahrenheit at idle to around 75 to 80 F while doing these complex calculations. I actually think it's Big Sur because I've been talking to several people who are having these kind of reboots. Stephen Getz is having it on his brand new MacBook Air. It's an M1 MacBook Air, and he has found that it only happens when it's charging, and that's when this has been happening for me. I haven't had any reboots other than that. Anyway, I posted in our Slack at podfeed.com/Slack. Phooey. I went off script and I had it in the script. I actually think it's
Seriously, only when it's charging.
yeah, that's the only time it happens.
That's
for
weird. Very
yeah,
strange.
so if he leaves it charging overnight, it reboots itself.
All right.
That's a nice feature. All right. I posted in our Slack at podfeed.com/Slack about the spontaneous reboots of macOS Big Sur, and while a few others chimed in with the same thing happening to them, like Stephen Getz with his brand new M1 MacBook Air, a couple of other people said that they have the same problem with Catalina. So I have no clue what's going on there, but I decided to switch over to my 2019 MacBook Pro running macOS Catalina, and I was able to let Stipple Gen 2 run for more than a day without being interrupted. While the 10,000 stipple run definitely looked way better than the 2,000 stipple render, it did take an awfully long time. The blog post from Evil Mad Genius suggested something around the 6,000 stipple number would get you a pretty good image, and at 11 seconds per frame to calculate it, that's a pretty practical compromise. They also say that a pretty good image comes out after around 40 generations, so it's running a new pass every 11 seconds, and at about 40 generations it starts to look good. I should mention that these generations get faster and faster over time. It's just the very first ones that take forever. Now, we already discussed that changing the number of stipples would start the rendering process all over again. But on the right-hand side of the control panel, you'll see display options, and modifying these options does not start the rendering process over again. The two main controls you'll care about are the minimum dot size and the dot size range. Now, you would think that if you set the minimum dot size really small and the dot size range really big, you'd get the best simulated range shading of an image. Oddly, that's not the case. The minimum dot size has a range of 0.5 to 8 mysterious units. I don't know what the units are, but it's 0.5 to 8. And the dot size range is from 0 to 20 mysterious units. Maybe not the same units. I have no idea. Anyway, setting the minimum dot size to 0.5 and the dot size range to 20 actually creates an image with an excessive amount of contrast. For example, in the stipple drawing generated from my headshot, my hair becomes solid black and my shirt looks almost pure white on one side. Now, it's good that you can fiddle with these controls without re-rendering, because it does take a bit of finesse of dot size and dot size range to get an image that you're going to like. It makes sense that changing these shouldn't be a highly compute-intensive effort, because it's not figuring out where the dots go, it's just figuring out what size to make them. But remember up front I told you that the controls were janky and hard to use? I spent quite a while trying to find the pattern to why sometimes I could drag one of the controls and it would immediately respond to me, and other times it wouldn't react at all. At first I thought maybe the buttons were good representations of the true targets, so I started clicking at the top, the bottom, the right, the left side of the button. Sometimes it would work, and sometimes not. Then I thought maybe it was when I tapped away to another app and came back, and that's why it reacted to my dragging the controls. But that was a red herring as well. After working with Stipple Gen 2 for about a week, I can finally explain why it seems persnickety on when it works and when it does not. When Stipple Gen 2 first starts to render, the app is busy. Even at 2,000 stipples, the beginning calculations are lengthy, and the app will pretty much only react to you right when it's finished a generation. If you don't catch it right then, You're waiting till the next generation before it's going to react. Now, the good news is, like I said, the more generations it gets done, the faster each generation gets. Now, after an hour on a low number of stipples, you can drag the sliders with abandon and pretty much get close to instant gratification. I let it run for more than a day with 10,000 stipples, and I can play with those sliders as often as I like because it got down to 0.07 seconds per frame. Like I said, that was more than a day doing the calculations. When you've got your sliders adjusted and your masterpiece looks pretty good, you can save your stipple file. It will save it as an SVG file. That stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. I know it's just a bunch of dots, but each stipple is evidently worthy of being considered a vector, even though they have neither magnitude nor direction. If you want to save the image as a normal file, such as a PNG or JPEG, you'll need to open up the SVG file in a vector design program. Now, my preference is Affinity Designer from Serif, but if you don't want to shell out any money for this little project, you can use the free Vectornator available in the Mac App Store. I'm going to warn you, though, that 10,000 stipple image took Vectornator to its knees, while Affinity Designer had no trouble opening it. Even the 6,000 stipple image that I made later was still, it would open it, but its reaction time, it would take, maybe a minute if I tried to move something in it. Anyway, I had to giggle at the file when I opened it in Affinity Designer, the 10,000 one. In the right sidebar, you can see different layers and groups of layers in your document. It had one group, and inside it was a separate layer for each oval. Yes, that's right, 10,000 separate layers, each with a single oval on it. That scroll bar was tiny. When you open up the SVG file in your vector design program, even though you have a square image, oddly, it's going to be on a very wide rectangle. I don't know why that is. You have to select the layer for the group of ovals, and then on export, make sure you only export the selected layer. After all this work, we finally have a pretty decent looking stipple image. The bottom line is that I had a blast with this odd little tool. I enjoyed discovering it. I enjoyed figuring out how to get it out of an open source repo. I liked learning how the dots were calculated, and I was particularly pleased to finally crack the code on how to get its controls to pay attention to me. You just have to be patient. And in the end, I was able to create a really cool stipple image of my headshot. Now, here's the punchline. There's a free app for iOS called Snapdot that does the same thing. The only problem with Snapdot is that the sliders are super easy to use, the interface is completely obvious, it makes your stipple in about 3 seconds, and the rendered image looks a bit better than Stipple Gen 2. It'll even make the stipples in grayscale or color for crying out loud. So if you want to go the easy route and use Snapdot, then fine. I won't stop you, but I may not respect you. Whew.
Can't get no respect.
No.
So.
Oh no. Jill just knocked over a bottle of pop onto her MacBook. No.
Oh. I am sorry to hear that.
You might want to turn it off.
Ah.
Stand it up, put it upside down, so, as a V upside down. Is it into the keyboard? Off and upside down. Oh. And thank goodness it was pop with a lot of sugar in it.
Yeah.
Unless it was diet, that might be better. Oh, that breaks my heart, Jill. I have been there. How many times, guys?
Couple. Well, then there was the magnet episode, back when we had spinning hard drives.
Oh, jeez. Oh, I feel your pain. I removed that. I removed what? The magnet? Oh, let's hear the Hindenburg recording. Wait a minute. How did it record? Oh, because you'd closed it and started another one, huh? All right. This is going to be a short show.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to do?
That's okay. You had a couple long ones there, so you're just making up for it.
Drinking. I'll just talk real slow on this one. Yeah, if I hit 30 minutes, maybe I should. Maybe I'll tell the story of the.
Did you do your chapter mark?
I just did.
Okay. Well, I missed it.
What show are you watching, dear?
Well, I wasn't watching your Hindenburg, so shoot.
Oh, okay.
We missed the action. And
You missed
Sandy even reminded.
I could try telling this. I could tell the story again of the of what's been going on in the live show.
No, you're coming up on 6.
Yeah, but the show is only 23 minutes long because I told that story. I should have told it for the podcast.
Ah.
We'll see. Oh, Mike just got here. The suspense is killing us. Yeah, I told it at the beginning, but I might tell it again. All right, muting Steve. I received my new M1 Mac Mini on Friday night after waiting a bit longer than others because I did a build to order to get a larger 1TB SSD. In theory, I bought the Mac Mini to replace its aging predecessor, a 6-year-old 2.6 GHz Intel Core i5. But you know what? Let's be honest with yourselves. Not yourselves. But let's be honest with ourselves. I just really wanted an M1 Mac, and since the big girl MacBook Pro isn't out yet, this was a relatively inexpensive method to get an M1 and get to dip my toes into this new technology. Our current Intel Mac Mini doesn't really have much to do. Its primary duty is to run 2 applications that back up our Synology to our Drobo. The Mac Mini runs Carbon Copy Cloner, which works great on all of the shares on our Synology, except for some reason Mike Bombich and I cannot discern. Carbon Copy Cloner can't seem to back up Steve's giant Final Cut Pro libraries, and those are video libraries. So that's where ChronoSync comes in. I use that to do Steve's libraries, and everything else is done with Carbon Copy Cloner. So between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. every single day, the Mac Mini jumps into action, runs these backups, and then goes to sleep until the next day. For a while, the Mac Mini ran as my Plex server, but the itty-bitty processor in the Synology is actually way faster and more reliable. The Mac Mini is so neglected that I just noticed it's still running Mojave. That was not by intent. I just apparently never went over there and noticed it was a desert on the background. Regardless of whether I needed an M1 Mac Mini, here we are. I've been a laptop user ever since the original PowerBooks were introduced, so I'm not used to using a desktop. In reality, though, my MacBook Pro is tethered to a CalDigit TS3 Plus dock most of the day. The dock provides power and Ethernet, as well as video to my 27-inch 5K LG display. In a way, my laptop acts like a desktop most of the time. But I'd love to start using the Mac Mini for all of my work, but unfortunately the Universal Audio Apollo Solo Thunderbolt interface for my big girl mic isn't yet compatible with macOS Big Sur. I need to use the big monitor with my MacBook Pro, but I can't use the Mac Mini without a monitor. I wanted to be able to have my cake and eat it too. And that's the beauty of using a dock. I realized I can just move the Thunderbolt 3 cable between the two Macs whenever I want to switch. Now, this does cause some mental gymnastics for me, though. For ages, I've had my MacBook Pro on the right side of my desk on a stand, the 27-inch monitor is right in front of me, and the Magic Keyboard and trackpad are connected over Bluetooth to the MacBook Pro. Now, when I'm working on the Mac Mini, my desk looks exactly the same. I've still got the MacBook Pro on the stand to my right, the keyboard and mouse are still right in front of me, and the 27-inch display is still showing the display of a Mac, but now it's the Mac Mini. And the Mac Mini is hidden behind the MacBook Pro, so I don't even see it, so everything looks the same to me. Let me give you an example of how my little brain gets confused by this setup. While prepping for the live show, I had some audio I wanted to play from QuickTime and have the live audience be able to hear it. That's pretty easy to do. I opened up Rogue Amoeba's loopback software and added QuickTime to the virtual audio source I use to pipe audio to YouTube and Discord for the live show. But when I hit play on QuickTime, the little meters in loopback didn't even move for the QuickTime source. I sat there in confusion for a few minutes before I realized my mistake. I had correctly set up loopback on the MacBook to my right, but then I opened QuickTime on the big display in front of me, which was the Mac Mini. Of course the MacBook Pro's loopback couldn't hear QuickTime because it wasn't there. It wasn't playing on that computer. I doubt this will be the last time I get confused like this. Well, I got the Mac Mini in the evening on Friday, and I hooked it up and did a little bit of playing around, installing just a couple of essentials like 1Password and TextExpander. Now, 1Password isn't universal yet, so I got a request to install Rosetta 2, and it worked perfectly. My first impressions of the Mac Mini were just what people have said. This is a noticeably snappy machine. I noticed it in some odd places, though. I downloaded an app and I moved it from downloads to applications, and it felt like it vaporized, it moved so quickly. Now, if you'd asked me before, how long does it take to move an app between folders, I would have told you it was already instantaneous. But this feels even faster. It's like it just goes, blink, it's just gone. Later, I told Steve when I came down to dinner that I was kind of hyperventilating because I was feeding the new Mac things to do, but it was doing them so quickly, I didn't have a chance to rest between activities. Usually you got a minute or two. In the morning, I like to sit in bed with a cup of coffee and doodle around on the internet. But I really wanted to play with the M1 Mac Mini that first day. Again, I got a cake and eat it too problem, and I had a solution. I got my MacBook Pro and I did a screen share into the Mac Mini to continue to play. The 5K display was readable on my 16-inch laptop screen in screen sharing, but I lowered the resolution a bit using display preferences on the Mac Mini to make it just a bit easier to see on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. And I gotta tell you, it worked great. I installed a few more apps on the new machine, mostly from the Mac App Store, but a few from outside of the store. I installed iThoughts so I could look at my clean install mind map to see what should be my highest priorities, because I have that all documented, of course. I added Dropbox, Microsoft To Do, Telegram, and Ulysses, and when Apple demanded I install Keynote, Pages, and GarageBand, I allowed it. At this point in the story, I've just told you everything that I have installed on this new Mac. Later in the morning, I sat down at my desk and the 27-inch display looked positively silly at the low resolution I'd used for the screen share. I opened displays in System Preferences to set the resolution back to normal. When I tried to change the resolution, System Preferences got locked up. And no big deal, these things happen. I simply used the force quit action to get rid of it. I relaunched System Preferences again, and again it locked up. But for extra entertainment, the force quit window locked up as well. I don't think I've ever seen force quit get locked up, but you know what? There's a first time for everything. I was chatting with Stephen Getz about this interesting turn of events, and he reminded me that I could use Activity Monitor to find the processes and force quit them from there. I was able to force quit the display's preference pane, but I didn't see a force quit process for force quit so that I could force quit it from Activity Monitor. Okie dokie, time for a restart. But you know what? The Mac Mini wasn't having any of that nonsense. With force quit stuck, it would not obey the restart command from the menus. I had to resort to using the power button on the Mac Mini. I hate to do that, but what are you going to do if it won't restart? It booted up, it asked me for my password to log in, and it rebooted. And it also was taking a very long time to boot up each time. So it boots up, okay, I get the black screen, I see the progress bar, and then it asks me for my password to log in, but it reboots again. I tried again and again, it rebooted. I let it do this dance 4 times before I decided it was time for a full power down with the hardware button. I waited till that little light went off. When it booted up this time, I had more entertainment ready for me. It went into recovery, and it told me to reinstall macOS Big Sur. Well, that was fun. I might have been able to bypass it, but you know what? Who am I to argue with it? If it really thinks it's gotten borked, I should let it have a new version. 45 minutes later, I had a reinstall of macOS Big Sur 11.0.1. And yes, that is the version I was originally running. But this is when things got really interesting. When it finally booted up, I got a pop-up window with a little File Vault logo on it that said, Panic Medic Boot. A third-party kernel extension was preventing the machine from successfully booting. All third-party kernel extensions have been disabled. You will be promoted to re-enable them in the Security and Privacy System Preferences pane as they are used. But here's the thing, Sparky. I didn't install any kernel extensions. The only thing I run that even smells like a kernel extension is the audio capture engine for the Rogue Amoeba software audio tools to work. According to a support article by Rogue Amoeba, it is not a kernel extension. But for some reason it is treated like one by Big Sur, and you have to go through a bit of a dance to install it. I put a link in the show notes if you need that. So that could have been the cause of the Panic Medic boot, except for the fact that I hadn't installed any of the Rogue Amoeba tools yet, so the audio capture engine was not installed. Now, the good news is that since the reinstall of macOS Big Sur, I've been able to have a few days more fun with the M1 Mac Mini without any issues at all. Just to test the original failure path, I tried changing the screen resolution to see if it would hang up again. Not only did it not hang up, it was crazy fast. You know how when you change resolution, there's kind of a delay and the screen goes black for a bit and then it comes back? That's not what happens on an M1 Mac. It changes as close to instantaneous as you could hope for. I actually thought something was wrong. It was so fast. I mean, it was just disconcerting to have it just go deet, deet, deet each time you hit it. It would just change. It is absolutely life-changing. Now, when I do the live show, I use a USB-C display for the chat room, and my MacBook Pro basically has a hissy fit when I connect it. It blinks on and off 3 or 4 times before it agrees to talk to it properly. I thought this might be a good challenge for the M1 to see if it would be instantaneous. But I didn't get to find out because the Mac Mini doesn't recognize the USB-C display at all. I have no idea why. Anyway, as Ron Hebe said so eloquently when I was whining about all of this in our Slack group that I just described, he wrote this: relatively new OS on first generation new CPU chip. Who could have predicted that there would be issues? There we go.
Very nice.
Ron Burgundy.
There was a typo that you might want to fix in the audio. In the Panic Medic boot quote, you will be promoted, not you, it should be prompted to re-enable.
You know, when I read that, I thought, that sounds weird. Why did they say that?
Yeah, like promoted to admin.
Yeah. Let me think, where's that? The only thing I read.
I don't know if.
Well, that was fun. I might have been able to bypass. 45 minutes later, I had to reinstall. Finally booted up. Boot. A third-party kernel. All right. I'm going to have to cut that. Let's split there. Split. Let me shove you. Actually, I'm going to put you on a lower track and hopefully remember to put you back. All right. So that track's muted. Thank you. I saw that. I was like, what? Promoted? I thought maybe they just had a grammar problem. Prompted. Maybe the first time. All right. Thank you. Who caught that? Who caught that typo? Mike.
Mike Price.
Good job, Mike. Thank you very much. Come on. Smidge over a little bit. One. There you go. All right. Muting Steve. A third-party kernel extension was preventing the machine from successfully booting. All third-party kernel extensions have been disabled. You will be prompted to re-enable them in the Security and Privacy System Preferences pane as they are used. Okay. I think this was probably Preferences pane as they are used. Okay, split that. Delete you, put you back up here. I am glad you caught that. That was a good one.
That's a lot easier than just editing a word.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where, I learned that from doing the Screencast Online videos is don't try to just do a word. It just sounds stupid when you do it. So you definitely want to fix it as a whole sentence. Kind of head out. Everyone
Mike,
be safe.
Mike's very happy because he gets a free podcast for a week now. As a reward.
But Rose gets the first one. You get the second one. Right?
They can't share.
All right. I'm going to attempt to tell the story.
Uh-oh. This sounds like you're winging it.
Yeah. We're going to see if I can do it. I mean, I told the story without stopping earlier, but we'll see. All right. Muting Steve. Here we go. How to start this. I'm going to do something I never ever do, and we'll see whether this works. I'm going to tell you a story, and I do not have a script to tell that story. It's really not part of the podcast. This is sort of a meta story we're going to go down here. You know, I do the live show, and we use a couple of different pieces of software to create the live show. I use a software called Mimo Live on my computer, and I send my video and audio to Steve, and on his computer, he also runs Mimo Live, and then he broadcasts to YouTube, and that's why you can watch the video and see it later. It's on live and it's on recorded. And between those two things, we are sending the audio to Discord for people to hear who are attending the live show. So in order to send my audio to Discord and to YouTube Live through Mimo Live, I use Rogue Amoeba's Loopback software. So Loopback allows me to combine two audio sources into a virtual audio source. So in order for the playback of Hindenburg, my audio recording software, to be heard in the live show through either Discord or YouTube, I need to combine that with my microphone's input. So again, I use Loopback to do that. All right, so we got Loopback and Mimo Live are probably the important things there. And I also use Rogue Amoeba's tool, Audio Hijack Pro, in order to, it's just called Audio Hijack now, right? Anyway, I use Audio Hijack to capture my microphone. I do some sweetening of the sound, and then that gets piped in. So we've got Audio Hijack, Mimo Live, and Loopback all in combination working here to help make the live show go. So 2 weeks ago, during the live show, suddenly my voice was gone from the podcast, from the live show. People could still hear Steve, but they weren't able to hear me. They weren't able to hear Hindenburg playing. And when I look at my audio tools, they all have little bouncy meters, and my voice wasn't moving on any of the bouncing meters. Now, I don't remember how we fixed it the first time. I quit some apps and went out and came back in. We got it fixed. But then last week, it happened again, and it was like 17 minutes into the show. Now, Steve is really competent, but I don't think he can do the podcast without me. I appear to be an important component to this. So being able to hear me was an important thing. So 17 minutes in, I go flatline. You can't hear me anywhere. And I'm looking at all the meters on all my applications. My voice is not moving. You can't see it we can't see it in Mimo Live. I couldn't see it in Loopback. I couldn't see it in Audio Hijack. It was like I wasn't talking. So we messed around. I turned a bunch of stuff off and on and tried to get in and out. And then I noticed partway into this that the lights were gone on my Universal Audio Apollo Solo interface, the one I was talking about earlier that I said it can't be upgraded to Big Sur yet. So when I saw the lights were out, I thought, oh my gosh, that's what's happening, is that piece of hardware is actually failing. So Steve raced in and he dug out my previous Shure MVI interface, which is USB instead of Thunderbolt, and I plugged it in and it worked and I was able to solve the problem. So I thought that I had figured out that it was the UA audio device, and so I was in the process of getting ready to pen a letter to Sweetwater, where I bought it, to get an exchange on it. Now, I wasn't exactly sure how to explain why it had failed, especially because I'm able to record podcasts all week long without any of this happening. So that was kind of curious to me because I could do podcasts with Bard. I could do Chit Chat Across the Pond. I never had this problem. It only happens during the live show. So I was still kind of hesitant to tell UA that they had a problem with their hardware, but I couldn't figure out how to tell what the problem was. I'm thinking about it, and I happen to be listening to the Mac Geek Gab. We get to the very end of the show, and all of a sudden I hear Dave Hamilton say, John, I'm not getting any audio from you. And I realize Dave does all the same stuff we do. Dave is like Steve. He's the producer and on-air talent, and he uses Mimo Live to send all the video and audio to YouTube Live, and he uses it, and he uses the same tools I do with Audio Hijack and Loopback. So those three main pieces of software are all running on his computer as this is going on, and John is running some of these same applications as well. I'm not exactly sure everything John's running, but John lost his ability to broadcast his audio to Dave. So I hear this and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, maybe it's not my interface. Maybe it's something about this combination of tools. So I texted Dave and I told him it was happening to me, and we popped into a video chat with Steve and we started talking through all the different things that were going on and comparing notes, and it seemed like we might be experiencing the same problem. Now, the way Dave got John back was interesting. Now, he also uses Logic for his recording, where I use Hindenburg, but he was able to change, he changed the buffer size in his recording application, and that, what he thinks that did was it tickled the audio system and made it flush a cache or something in order to get back into business. So that was kind of interesting because he did it on his computer. I don't know that the problem here is on Steve's, because remember, Steve and Dave are equivalent in this plot. It felt like it was really something wrong on mine. So we were thinking about that, and then we thought, well, wait a minute. Mimo Live seems to be involved in this primarily because I'm not having the problem when I'm not running Mimo Live. So what's easier than just getting the CEO of Boinks, the makers of Mimo Live, on the video call? So we got a hold of Oliver Breidenbach, who is in Germany, and he was still up, and he said, hey, I'd love to talk to you guys. And so he came on, and we actually had a really nice time talking, the four of us, because we do hang out together at certain events, but obviously nobody's hanging out at certain events anymore for right now. So anyway, we got talking, and he couldn't figure out how Mimo Live could be causing the problem, but he did think Dave was onto something with this tickling of the buffer, and he also suggested I might be able to get this to restart or get me reconnected by changing the sample rate of my audio input in loopback. So we talked about the different possible solutions, and he also said if this happens again, that I could go into Activity Monitor and you can pull a sample from an application. So he says if it crashes, or not crashes, but if it does this again, get a sample from Mimo Live. He says that way at least I have something to look at to see if there's any chance Mimo Live is causing the problem. Then what we really wanted to get Paul Kafasis on with us as well. He's the CEO of Rogue Amoeba that makes Loopback and Audio Hijack, but we didn't have contact information that would allow us to get him in, so we didn't do that, but we sent an email. Dave wrote it, and then I added some more information, and he didn't understand how his tools could do it either, but he asked me to, the next time we're recording, to start up Audio Hijack with the Option key held down, which would create a debug log for them on Audio Hijack. So at 3:30 today, Steve and I started up Mimo Live and Audio Hijack and went into Discord, and we got Loopback going, and we started it up, and we ran it for a full hour and a half before the live show, and it never failed. And I am now recording right now, and it has not failed in this entire time. So this has all been running. We're coming up on 3 full hours, and we've had no failure of this system. Naturally, because I'm watching it, I'm pulling log files, and I can catch it in the act, it is not going to fail. So anyway, I thought this whole exercise was pretty interesting. I am going to put in one more detail just so I can remember to go back and listen to this, just in case this was why. When we were talking about the buffer size, Oliver mentioned that there's a buffer size change toggle in, or pull down in Mimo Live. So I had a buffer size of 512 samples, and while I was talking to him, I changed it to 128. So this entire exercise has happened with 128. And let's read what the audio buffer size actually means in Mimo Live. It says smaller buffer sizes result in lower playthrough device latency, but increase the CPU load. That's okay. I got plenty of CPU load. It also says, if you experience audio dropouts or similar issues, choose a higher buffer size. I made it lower. Anyway, it goes on to say, note that this setting takes effect immediately and affects playthrough, recording, streaming, and play out. So I don't know if setting it to 128 fixed it, especially since it says if you're having audio dropouts, change it to a bigger number, but that's the only thing I changed in between. So I'm going to wrap us up there. I don't know what we're going to find out. Maybe it'll crash, and not crash, but maybe it'll lock me out next week. Hopefully I'll remember to get all these things set to get it started and see whether we can catch it in the act next time. Sorry to disappoint everybody, but it didn't break when we were watching it. Anyway, that's going to wind us up for this week. Don't forget to send in your dumb questions, comments, and suggestions by emailing me at allison@podfeet.com. And you can follow me on Twitter @podfeet. Remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. Want to become a patron? podfeet.com/Patreon. Want to do a one-time donation through PayPal? podfeet.com/PayPal. Don't want to do any of those? Go give some money to a food bank. If you want to join in the conversation, you can join our Slack at podfeet.com/Slack or join our Facebook group at podfeet.com/Facebook. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, and Kevin will be back soon, head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic NosillaCastaways. Thanks for listening, and stay subscribed. There, I got us 44 minutes.
Wow. Well done. Good vamping. Did you make all that up?
I did. I did that off the top of my head. That was pretty good, wasn't it?
But it was all factual. Was accurate and factual. Well done.
I know.
It wasn't
Wait,
just...
You're surprised at that?
So a few things. First of all, Richard from Alaska joined us. I haven't seen him here in months, I think.
Oh, Richard.
So welcome back, Richard.
Hey, how have you been? Caught the tail end?
Yeah.
I'm going to listen real quick
probably-
here. Just a second. Stay
Sure.
subscribed. Okay, that's good. Yeah, nice to see you again. That's exciting.
Yeah. Secondly, did you put a chapter mark for this vamping session? Oh, you're going
I
so late.
didn't.
Everything
Yeah,
cut
my
out.
lights are out. I didn't. I should probably...
I think you should,
That's
yes.
probably a good idea. Yeah, where did it...
Thank you, Sandy.
Where did I do it? Thank you, Sandy. I'm going to have to...
That's a long one.
Oh, yeah, it was around 34 minutes, wasn't it? Isn't that what I said?
This one,
Wow, that was a long time.
no, yeah.
11 minutes without screwing up. All right, I'm
Maybe
gonna have
you
to
don't
do
need a
chapter
script.
market. What's that?
Maybe you don't need a script.
Oh, yeah. Vamps on live show issues. How's that? Allison
Yeah, so you
Vamps
don't
on
put
live
a...
show issues.
I guess there's no link. There's no blog post.
Nope. I could transcribe
And-
it with... what?
You could, yeah. And the last thing is, a while back, the issue with the crashing or hang up, was that when Stephen Getz experienced it, was that due to Big
You talking
Sur
about the
or
reboots?
the... Yeah.
The reboots.
Was that due to M1 or Big Sur, or
How
do we know?
How do you know?
Because this was on an M1 MacBook Pro or MacBook Air.
But and here's what made it really entertaining was as we were all posting about these problems, Alistair Jenks came in and said, "Oh, you guys are so cute with your Big Sur reboots. I've been having that on Catalina for a really long time." So,
All right.
yeah, Mike, you're new to the show here. You're saying scripted as its advantage and outline can make the show flow possibly better. I tried that, and what I found was that it was more work for me to write an outline than it was for me to write the blog post. Is that I would find myself writing and then taking words out to make it an outline. And then I realized that there's a lot of people who like the blog post. So I give them what they want, and I don't, I'm not as good off the cuff. I mean, I know a lot of people can do it, and I can do it in a conversation, but a solo show like that, not everybody can do it, and I'm one of those people who can't do it very well off the cuff.
And then there was the listener who wrote in about, who was blind deaf.
Yeah, deafblind guy wrote in and said,
Deafblind.
I don't want to have a long conversation with you. I'm never going to write back again, but I want you to know I'm out here reading your blog post with my my Mac Mini and a Braille display. And if you weren't doing these blog posts, I wouldn't be getting your content. And I declared on that day that I would do those blog posts forever just for that guy. So there you
Yep.
go.
Yeah, and an outline just wouldn't do it.
I said you're new here because you missed the times when I used to try to do it that way.
Yeah, that's been a while, though. It's been a long
it's
time.
it's
Many,
been
many
quite a
years.
while, so. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was probably 10 or 12 years ago.
10, 12 years.
Yeah.
Well, you've only been going, what, 15, 16?
15. Yeah. So, I mean, I applaud people who can do it. I think Adam Christensen does it that way. And, more power to you, Adam. You go, girl. It's just not me. So, all right. Well, we have kept the class very late. I appreciate it.
Very late, yes.
Oh, you do it with .ai transcripts. That's good. All right. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. It's time to call it. Goodbye. Yes, as Sandy says, have a great week, everyone. Stay healthy. Bye, Rose.